I stood at the foot of the steps leading to the jet, the hum of the engines filling the air, the acrid scent of burning fuel thick in my nostrils. The sun was setting behind the tarmac, casting long shadows, but all I could focus on was her, my wife. She stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, her gaze colder than I had ever seen it. "Only family is allowed," she said. Her words didn't hit immediately. They hung in the air for a moment, as if they needed time to sink in and claw at my chest. I laughed, not out of amusement, but in disbelief. "That's a joke, right?" She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. She just tilted her head slightly, impatient. "You're not on the list. Only board members and family are invited to this trip." Board members and family. I clenched my jaw. "And what exactly am I, Sophia?" She sighed, exasperated, as though I were some clueless intern, not the man who had helped build her empire with his own two hands. "Look, you knew this was a strategic business retreat. There's no point in making this personal." "No point?" I took a slow, deliberate step back, scanning the faces already seated inside, the company I built, the product I created, the team I personally trained. And yet, I was the outsider. "I understand," I said, my voice steady. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me react. I wouldn't let her think she had the power to break me. Her assistant stepped forward, motioning to security as if I were some random nobody loitering on the runway. The audacity of it almost made me laugh again. I took another step back, watching the jet doors seal shut and the engines roar to life, my wife, the supposed partner, taking off without me. I stood there watching as the jet shrank into the horizon. My reflection in the terminal's glass windows showed a man I barely recognized, a man who had given everything and was left with nothing. No, that wasn't true. She thought she had. Erased me from her success. She had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Because if she truly wanted me gone, if she wanted to erase me from the empire we built together, then I would do something even better. I would erase her empire entirely, the beginning of us. I remember the first time I saw Sophia. She wasn't the woman she is today. Polished, ruthless, sitting atop an empire that bore my fingerprints but none of my name. Back then, she was scrappy, fighting tooth and nail to keep her failing tech startup from crashing into the abyss of forgotten ideas. I had heard of her before I met her. She had a reputation, not for innovation, but for her ability to sell a vision. Investors loved her because she had the confidence of someone who belonged in boardrooms, even if she didn't fully understand the technology she was pitching. And that's where she was struggling. She had connections, influence, but she lacked the raw, unshakable substance to back up the dreams she sold. And then there was me, a software engineer, but not just any engineer. I had something people had been chasing for years. A revolutionary algorithm that could change the industry. Hypersync started as a passion project in my small, dimly lit apartment. It was an AI-driven automation software that could optimize business operations in real time, adapting without human intervention. It was brilliant. It was unstoppable. It just needed the right stage. And Sophia? She had the stage. We met at a tech summit. I had barely scraped together enough money for a ticket, spending the last of my savings to be in a room filled with people who didn't even know my name. Meanwhile, she was there as a guest speaker, talking about innovation while her own company was circling the drain. She saw me before I even saw her. I was in the demo hall, showing a group of skeptical attendees what Hypersync could do. The moment the screen displayed its seamless adaptability, she was watching from across the room. She waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. "You made this?" There was something sharp about her tone, something calculated. I nodded. She smiled, but it wasn't the polite kind. It was the kind that hinted at opportunity. "I think we need to talk." That conversation lasted hours. She asked real questions, not just about the technology, but about me. who I was, what I wanted, what my endgame was. I told her the truth. I didn't care about fame. I just wanted my work to exist. I wanted it to be used. And that's when she said the words that altered my entire future. You have the brains, I have the resources. We'd be unstoppable together. It was the perfect pitch. She told me about her struggling startup, how she was on the verge of losing investor confidence. But if we merged my software with her infrastructure, we could redefine the industry. It wasn't just flattery, it was real. For the first time, I saw a path forward for my work that didn't involve me sitting alone in a dark room hoping someone would notice. So, I said yes. From two strangers to partners. The next few years were a blur of hard work, late nights, and blind faith. I poured my entire soul into refining Hypersync, making it sharper, faster, more adaptive than anything the world had ever seen. Meanwhile, Sophia worked her magic, securing funding, partnerships, press coverage. It was exhilarating. We weren't just business partners. We were equals, or so I thought. Somewhere along the way, the late-night strategy meetings turned into shared dinners. The professional admiration turned into something deeper. Before I even realized it, I was in love with her. She believed in me when no one else did. She championed my work, fought to bring it into the world, and in return, I trusted her completely. We got married before the company even took off. It felt like a natural step, like we were sealing our commitment not just to each other, but to our vision. Hypersync wasn't just a company, it was our child, the thing we built together, the thing we were going to share forever. Or so I thought. The first red flag. At first, it was small things. Sophia would take press interviews alone, brushing off my presence as if I were just some behind-the-scenes tech guy. Investors started associating Hypersync solely with her, treating me like I was her employee rather than her co-founder. In meetings, she'd correct people who referred to Hypersync as our company, subtly shifting the language to imply it was hers. I didn't say anything. I convinced myself it didn't matter. We were a team, weren't we? What was the point of arguing over something as petty as credit when we were both reaping the rewards of our success? But looking back, that was the moment the balance shifted. That was when I should have seen the warning signs. Because Sophia wasn't just ambitious. She wasn't just driven. She was hungry. And soon, I would find out just how much she was willing to consume to stay on top. The company that Sophia had built, rising to the top from the ground up, was all too familiar to me. But as I stood there watching it all crumble, I realized something she had forgotten. Everything that powered Hypersync was still mine. The software, the security, the very systems that had made it a giant, all started with my code. And now, with nothing left to lose, I was about to take back what was rightfully mine. As I drove away from the airstrip, my grip tightened on the steering wheel. She thought she had erased me, locked me out, and taken everything. But she didn't realize that I still held the ultimate trump card. The source code, the security, keys, and the back door I'd built into the system from the beginning. A safety measure, a kill switch, installed when I still believed in the company we had built together. She thought she had won, but she was wrong. For the first time, I wasn't playing defense. I wasn't trying to keep my place. I was going to take it all back. Hypersync wasn't just a company. It was an ecosystem. A self-sustaining network powering everything from trading firms to global supply chains. It was designed to be impenetrable, but I knew the flaw. A flaw I'd built in from the start. A hidden failsafe buried deep within the code. It was there for one reason: to reclaim control if anything ever went wrong. And it was time to use it. I didn't go home that night. There was no point in returning to the penthouse we had once shared, the one that felt more like a museum of her success. Instead, I drove to a place that still felt undeniably mine. The private development server I had rented years ago, back when Hypersync was just an idea, a dream coded into existence. No one knew about it. Not Sophia, not the engineers, not even the board. This was my failsafe, and tonight it would be the beginning of her downfall. The code no one knew existed. The first move was simple, a security reconfiguration. On the surface, nothing changed. Hypersync continued running as usual. But behind the scenes, every executive-level access key was revoked. No one, neither Sophia nor the board, could log in or make critical system changes. I watched, satisfied, as the system reset itself. She wouldn't notice immediately, but soon enough she would wake up to a world where she was no longer in control. The next morning at 6:07 a.m., my phone rang. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. Finally, I picked up. "Aaron," she snapped, no pretense in her voice, just pure panic. "Hypersync is locked down. We can't access anything. What the hell did you do?" I smiled, savoring the moment. "Good morning, Sophia. Something wrong?" "Don't play games," she said, frustration creeping into her voice. "The system is rejecting all executive logins. The entire board is locked out. The engineers can't override it." "I know you did something." I leaned back in my chair, savoring the silence. Then I said the words I knew she never expected to hear. "Sorry, but only family is allowed." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could almost picture her standing there, phone clenched in her hand, as her carefully constructed world began to fracture. She finally spoke, her voice cold. "You think you can take it back? You think you can win?" I let out a short laugh. "Sophia, I already did." The beginning of her downfall had begun. By the time she landed, it was too late. Hypersync's entire security system had been overhauled. All critical operations now required my biometric authentication. The board was in chaos, and investors were demanding answers. Sophia realized, for the first time, what she had done. She had betrayed me, shut me out of my own company. But she had forgotten one thing. I built it. I knew every line of code, every flaw, every hidden failsafe. And now, I was going to burn it all to the ground. The next few hours were a blur of missed calls and frantic messages. Sophia wasn't wasting any time. She called in every expert she could find, top-tier cyber specialists, former government analysts, even a few of my old team members, but no one could break through the lockout. The system was rejecting them all. At 10 a.m., the board finally called. "Aaron," one of the members said, trying to mask the tension in his voice, "we seem to have encountered a technical issue. I assume you're aware of it." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch before answering. "I might be." "Look," he said, frustration creeping into his tone. "We need your help. This has gone on long enough." I smirked. "Funny, no one cared about my help when you let Sophia push me out." There was a long silence. Then he exhaled sharply. "Look, we can negotiate. But this is bigger than personal grievances. You need to restore access." I chuckled, shaking my head. "You think this is about personal grievances? You still don't get it. This isn't about revenge or getting my place back. I'm tearing it apart from the inside out." A tense silence followed. Then I said the words that would seal their fate. "You had your chance. You chose your side. Now you get to watch what happens next." I hung up. By noon, Sophia cracked. She didn't call. She showed up at my door. I wasn't surprised. Sophia never begged over the phone. She needed to be in control, to stand in front of someone and make them see her authority. But this time, she had nothing. I opened the door to find her, impeccable as always in her designer suit. But her eyes were different. For the first time, in this whole war, she looked afraid. "What do you want?" I asked, leaning against the door frame. "Let me in," she demanded. I didn't move. "Aaron," she said, her voice tight. "We can fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "Fix what?" "The company, the system. Whatever you did, you need to undo it." "Why would I do that?" I asked, my voice steady. She exhaled, frustration seeping into her words. "Because the entire company is falling apart. This is bigger than just you and me." I gave her a long, cold look. "Good." Her jaw tightened as she tried to regain control. "You don't understand," she said, trying to sound calm. "This is going to cost you, too. Your name is still tied to Hypersync, your reputation." I cut her off. "You mean the reputation you spent years erasing?" She flinched. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "I don't care about Hypersync anymore, Sophia. I care about watching you lose everything." For the first time, she had no response. The desperation in her eyes told me everything. This wasn't just business anymore. It was personal, and she had no way out. I leaned in close, delivering the final blow. "You already did that the moment you looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't family anymore." Tears burned in her eyes, real tears, something I hadn't seen from her before. The woman who could manipulate every emotion now had nothing to say. It was over. I stepped back, my expression neutral. "You should go." Without another word, she turned and walked out. The media soon picked up the story. Hypersync faced an unprecedented crisis. Investors fled, and Sophia's reign was crumbling faster than anyone could have imagined. The truth was finally out. Hypersync wasn't her creation. It was mine. And without me, it was falling apart. By midnight, the company had lost half its valuation. Sophia was finished, not just as CEO, but as a business legend. She had built her empire on the back of my work, and now it was all turning to ashes. The world had always believed Sophia was the mastermind behind 3747 Hypersync, but the truth was far different. She was the woman who lost it, and I was the one who made it all happen. The final blow came the morning after she left my apartment, when I sat at my laptop, watching the world change in real time. Hypersync's stock had plummeted by 60% overnight. For years, Sophia had built her empire, crafting an image of power, control, and innovation, convincing the world that she was the driving force behind Hypersync's success. But within 24 hours, all of that had collapsed. The media, once enamored with her, had turned on her, dissecting every flaw, every decision, every questionable move she'd made. It was almost poetic. She'd spent so much time erasing me from the company's history, convincing herself she was the sole architect of its success, but now, in the span of a day, she was just another fallen CEO. Her name was being dragged through the mud, and I wasn't done. By midday, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Sophia. This time it was her lawyer. I let the call ring twice before answering. "Yes?" I said coolly. There was a pause. "Mr. Carter, we'd like to discuss an arrangement," the lawyer began. I leaned back in my chair, stretching my legs out. "No," I cut him off. "No arrangement, no deal, no negotiation." The lawyer hesitated, but his voice remained steady, though I could hear the tension in it. "Mr. Carter, Sophia is willing to make certain concessions." I couldn't help but laugh. "She doesn't have anything left to bargain with. She lost her company, her investors, her reputation. So, what's she offering?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then the lawyer tried a different approach. "We're willing to reinstate you as co-founder of Hypersync." I cut him off again. "Hypersync doesn't exist anymore," I said smoothly. "At least not the way she thinks it does." The lawyer was silent for a moment, clearly confused. "What do you mean?" I smiled. "You'll see soon enough." And with that, I hung up. I was ready. I had been planning for this day, waiting for the moment when I could not only watch Hypersync crumble, but take it back and rebuild it, this time under my name. So with a few keystrokes, I executed the final phase of my takeover. Hypersync's patents were transferred, the AI's core structure was migrated, and the original technology was sealed away. Everything that had once made Hypersync a billion-dollar company was no longer under Sophia's control. It still existed in name, but its soul, its foundation, its power, it was mine now. At 7:00 p.m., I got one last text from her. No lawyer, no board, just her. Meet me one last time. Hotel Langford, 8:00 p.m. I stared at the message, considering whether it was worth responding. Finally, I decided to go, not because she deserved another conversation, but because I wanted to see the look on her face when she realized it was over. I arrived exactly at 8:00 p.m. The hotel bar was nearly empty, the dim lighting casting long shadows across the polished mahogany. I spotted her immediately. Sophia sat in the corner booth, a glass of untouched wine in front of her. She looked different, not broken, not defeated, just tired. I took my time walking over, watching as she lifted her gaze to meet mine. "Didn't think you'd come," she murmured. I slid into the seat across from her, resting my arms on the table. "Curious," I said, studying her, noting the subtle changes, the tension in her shoulders, the faint, dark circles under her eyes, the absence of the control she had once exuded. "How does it feel?" She stilled. What feels?" "Losing everything," I said softly. She inhaled sharply, and for a moment I thought she might snap back, might fight. One last time, but she didn't. Instead, she looked down at her glass. "You were always the smarter one," she admitted quietly. "I just talked better." I leaned forward. "You stole from me, Sophia. You erased me, and you expected me to just accept it." She swallowed hard, looking away for a moment, before meeting my eyes again. "I thought you wouldn't fight back." I gave her a slow, humorless smile. "That was your first mistake." She exhaled, gripping the stem of her glass, and then said, "And your first mistake?" I shrugged, trusting you. A long silence passed between us, and then, softly, she said, "I never stopped loving you, you know." I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I just watched her, seeing right through her attempt at manipulation, the last desperate attempt to pull me back in, to make me feel something for her again. But that part of me, the part that would have believed her, the part that would have wanted to forgive her, was already gone. I stood up, sliding my hands into my pockets, and delivered the final blow. "I stopped loving you the second you told me I wasn't family." Her breath caught. I didn't look back when she called my name, or when she let out a shaky breath, trying to hold back tears. I just walked out of the hotel and into the night, leaving her behind with everything she had lost. And as I walked away, I knew one thing for certain. This was the last time I would ever see Sophia again. She didn't reach out again. Not a call, not a text. I wasn't surprised. What was left to say? She had spent years crafting her own mythology, convincing the world she was the mastermind behind Hypersync. But now the world was moving on and Sophia was being forgotten. The headlines wrote themselves. The fall of Sophia Calloway. Hypersync implodes. Was it built on lies? From tech icon to pariah. Sophia Calloway's stunning downfall. The press had been relentless, picking apart every interview, every claim she had made, every move she had made while pushing me into the background. Former employees came forward, investors distanced themselves, and even her most loyal supporters abandoned her. Hypersync's board of directors voted her out. She was officially removed as CEO. She was nothing anymore. No more corporate events. No more keynote speeches. No more headlines celebrating her. Just silence. I heard through a mutual contact that she was trying to sell her remaining shares, desperate to salvage what little she could. But with the company in free fall, her stock was worth nothing. She had lost everything. Meanwhile, I was rising. 2 weeks after her removal, I launched something new. Not a revival, but a rebirth. SyncForge, a new AI-driven platform that was faster, smarter, and sharper than anything Hypersync had ever been. And this time, it wasn't just me. I had spent the past few weeks reaching out to the real minds. Behind Hypersync, the developers, the engineers, those she had discarded, undervalued, and overlooked. They came back to me, not for money, not for status, but for revenge. When SyncForge launched, it was an immediate success. Investors who had pulled out of Hypersync came to me first. Tech publications that had once praised Sophia now celebrated me as the true genius behind it all. Sophia, of course, was watching from the sidelines, unable to help herself. She had spent years making sure the world only knew her name. Now, the world was forgetting her entirely. Then, one night, my phone rang. I almost ignored it, but when I saw the name, Sophia, I knew I had to answer. I picked up. There was silence at first. Then her voice, thin and frail, whispered, "Aaron." I leaned back in my chair. "Sophia." There was a long pause, and then she, barely above a whisper, said, "I need help." I didn't react. Didn't let any satisfaction slip into my voice. I had been waiting for this moment. She had spent years acting untouchable, the goddess of the tech world, but now she was begging me. I took my time before answering. "Sorry, Sophia, only family is allowed." And with that, I ended it for good.